What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined, as always, by my trusty co-host, Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. It's the spring, and we're still getting movie delays. So how normal is it really? Don't
Yeah,
know.
what are the ones this week? Paramount?
Paramount, yeah. Top Gun Maverick moves to November. Mission Impossible 7 moves to May 2022. That's the two big ones. Yeah.
Are you excited for Top Gun Maverick?
Fuck yeah, that trailer is great. It just
The
looks like,
trailer's really good.
I mean, it looks a lot like Tom Cruise doing Mission Impossible stuff, just, a little more toned down. And it's got, like, who's it? Jay Ellis and um, Glenn Powell and Miles Teller. Like it's got people I like, so I'm totally in.
Yeah, I don't know. Planes, flying, fighter jets. I don't know if it's totally my thing, but the trailer does look really great, and I'll watch pretty much any action movie Tom Cruise does at this point. So
I mean, think about it. It's perfectly set up. It's like we don't need you anymore. We got our drones.
but he's the
Dogfighting is an
best.
ancient art.
Yeah.
And then what's he gonna say? It's like, yeah, but you can't teach this or something. Like it's gonna be great. Can't wait.
You can't take the human element out of it.
Yeah, you already know the beats. That's all good.
Anyways, if you are tuning into this podcast, give us a subscribe down below. Hit that follow button on Twitter at NowstalgiaPod, and go to SoundCloud.com/NowstalgiaPod if you want to listen to this any other way other than YouTube. Dave, we have to start with some sad news today. And as a resident of Westchester, I'm feeling particularly sad about this because DMX, Earl Simmons, rap legend, passed away late last week. I think it was Friday. He'd been in the hospital after a drug overdose. I believe he had a heart attack, maybe potentially more than one, and was fighting for his life for about a week and finally passed away after there had been some false reports that he had passed away earlier in the week.
Mm.
What was your reaction to all of this?
Yeah, obviously very sad for a lot of reasons. I mean, in general, he was 50. That's just too young to be losing someone, right? I think that goes without saying. But yeah, I mean, DMX has not been one to avoid issues. He's had substance troubles in the past, legal issues in the past as well. So I wasn't surprised to see anything pop up like that, but to see him just straight up die is like, damn.
Mhm.
Again, I think it's just sad, and it's just a loss for the community because even though he wasn't exactly making the best work as far as late period rappers go, like he hasn't really made too much noise in a long time, but he still was really revered and moving in circles that you wanted to be a part of, right? Like seeing like clips being shared now of him talking to Jay-Z from like a year or two ago and just watching him shoot the shit with anyone, because he's one of a few that can really speak to a lot of, you know, his music experiences. It's just that's the kind of stuff you just wish wasn't lost, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and there was a clip going around where he had done an interview, I believe, back in February of this year, saying, if I died tomorrow, like I lived a good life, and I think there's like some like peace that comes with that, but also I think some sadness and the idea that I think he seemed to have some idea that maybe the way he was living or his health wasn't always um, the best, but seeing the story shared about him of like just real genuine kindness and sincerity. Um, there was a great one about he was first class on a plane with this woman and her teenage daughter and giving them tickets to their show and just having like a real awesome interaction. There's a great Twitter thread about that. I saw people posting the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer rendition that he does, which is just an all-time remix of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he just seemed like a really good guy underneath the obviously tough guy rep persona that he
Right.
had. Seems like he was tough in a lot of ways too.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I mean, musically, I think that was a big part of him. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, speaking of genuineness, it's like there were stories of him taking time out of his day to like really just sit down and talk to like some homeless person he had just come across, and not just like hand him some money and pat him on the back, but actually like sit and just be with them for like a long stretch of time. Like he really seemed to sympathize with that kind of struggle because he went through a lot, so much on his own.
Mhm.
And it took him a long time to even become a big artist. Like he didn't really get successful until his late 20s, right? Which is pretty uncommon for hit rappers. But I mean, and that's the thing. It's like, I actually remember meeting someone in college whose favorite rapper of all time was DMX, which was pretty
Mm.
uncommon because given our age, we were not the most musically cognizant at the time of DMX's peak, right? I mean, it's only really a few years, but he was really running New York at that time, post Biggie and Tupac, as kind of like a extension of gangster rap, but really a antithesis to the rising shiny suit era that Diddy was leading in New York. And I mean, everyone knows the hits at this point, but really, I think those first three records that came out in '98 and '99 are really seminal and really influential. And I mean, you can see his influence still today. Like people like Denzel Curry and
Mhm.
JPEG Mafia, Rico Nasty, Slow Tie, even XXX Tentacion, all cite DMX as a big influence. You can see that, right? Like no one really seemed to try and bite who DMX was. It didn't really seem like that's something you could do again because he was
Mhm.
really genuine and everything about him, and it's a big part of the music.
Yeah, it's crazy 'cause when I think about DMX, certainly some of his songs come to mind. Riders Anthem, I think, is probably
Mhm.
the number one for me. But his voice is just so unique. No one has that DMX growl,
Yeah,
and
the bark.
and his ad libs too, were just always so good. What y'all really want? Like it's
Hmm.
like things like that. Uh, yeah, I mean, larger than life figure, and feels like too often we're talking about these type of people burning out too soon. So
Yeah, totally. Again,
big
like
loss.
MF Doom again randomly
Yeah.
died last year, like out of nowhere. Stuff just really sad. I think the best clip and it's a clip that was shared pretty regularly in general, even before DMX passed. But DMX at Woodstock 1999, just because it's an incredibly legendary performance. No background vocals, as energetic as you expect DMX to be, but also, if I'm not mistaken, it was the biggest live crowd for a hip hop performance at the time, like damn near 200,000 people to see DMX a year plus into his real fame at that. Like, and obviously Woodstock '99, total shit show, but by all accounts, that was one of the better moments of it. Um,
That
but in
that
general, I mean, just
crowd
watch that set. It's insane.
Yeah, that crowd is like eating out of the palm of his hand the whole time. He's just running back and forth. And it just seems like it goes on forever. It's almost just like he's playing to like the entire world, it feels like at times in that video. So pretty amazing. Definitely check that out. And yeah, play some DMX this week in his honor. Give him those spins. Why don't we move on though to someone that people say kind of is in the same line as DMX, Taylor Swift, dropping the Taylor version of
Mm.
Fearless, her re-recording of her album that's going to be 13 years old this year, dropped in November of 2008. Um, yeah, you know, I believe this one of the songs that came off it is a new song because there's some additional tracks at the end. Mr. Pretty Fine, I believe it's called.
Mhm.
Um, really making some waves. This is all very public. I don't know if stunt is the right word, but tactic by Swift to
Mhm.
basically subvert the Scooter Braun issue where he owns her masters, and
Mm.
this is her creating her own masters of
Right.
these songs in a sense. Um, this is the first full recording we've gotten like this. We've heard some singles dropped before. Dave, what do you think of all this? How did you listen to the album? Did you give it a chance?
I listened to some of the new songs, and like you said, it's not only Fearless, but it's also a number of songs that had come out at that time that were not on Fearless originally, as well as 6 songs from the vault recorded at that time, but not actually released for public consumption until now. And of course, some of those, the new mixing and Maren Morris, is on one of these tracks. Maren Morris, of course, was not actually creating that song in 2008, 2007. But it's also important to note that Scooter Braun does not own Big Machine Records and Taylor Swift's catalog anymore. He actually he's sold that company to a different investment fund. So it's actually even more anonymous, really, who owns the first 6 Taylor Swift master recordings. Anyway, I find the whole premise very interesting because for a lot of angles, but you've seen complete buy-in from the Swifties, right? Taylor's version is the only version we stream now because we're putting money in Taylor's pocket, right? He controls it.
Yeah.
No real problem with that. And from what I've gathered, and I did listen to some of it, she intended to replicate the songs. And despite the fact that she's 31 now, not 18, she did a pretty good job replicating most of it. And like, there's like, I guess there's subtle differences in like her slightly lower voice
Vocal
in life, you know,
range, yeah.
due to age, but like it's more or less replication. And it's been funny seeing the reactions of hardcore fans for noticing the subtle differences and how Taylor singing those songs and singing those lyrics that were more natural for an 18-year-old than they are for a 31-year-old. Seeing those reactions has been pretty interesting to me. But it's definitely a unique prospect because this kind of gambit to retake back your catalog by doing something you can do by re-recording once that clause in the contract expires. Only so many artists could attempt this with any hope of success, and of course Taylor Swift is probably at the top of the list these days, hence why she's done it.
Yeah, you know, the I think the buy-in is really the hard part, right? Because you think about a song like Love Story. You know, I was listening to quite a bit White Horse this weekend, You Belong With Me. Like these are tracks that, I mean, are like legit timeless hits at this point. You know,
Yeah.
songs that are just pop gold. And the fact that basically Taylor was just like, "Yep, I'm gonna re-record these," and everybody just like, now this is the only version is insane to me. Because you're right, like you think about the perspective that these songs were written from was someone who was in high school. You know, she was 18 at the time that this was released. 15 is on this album, and she's singing this now twice the age of the person in that song. And
Right.
so to hear a 30-year-old singing about the experience of a 15-year-old freshman in high school is kind of strange. And I think that like higher vocal range actually works a lot better for some of these songs. Not that the songs on this version sound bad. I think they all sound pretty great actually. It's just kind of a strange dynamic, and it just shows the power that she has over her fan base. That people are just like, "Yep, this is it now." It's insane.
Right. And it was pretty shrewd to start with Fearless in this re-recording plan because obviously Diamond album, as you said, the 2 big hits, Love Story and You Belong With Me, 8 and 7 times platinum, you know, NBD.
Pretty good.
But I think the next piece to look for is, will all the programming on digital streaming services like Spotify and Apple Music, will all the programming remove those original versions and switch to this? Because Taylor really can't control how this music is programmed. Obviously, she has a big pull as a featured artist on Republic Records and being Taylor Swift, but she can't make them do anything with the programming. So I'd be very interested to see if that actually happens. I think at this point it's pretty safe, and there's a great feature that came out a few months back on Vice about the business implications of this. But it seems like all licensing that will be done in the future for any of the songs off this album, it seems very likely that companies are going to approach Taylor and license the new versions, which means the value of the old Fearless Masters has drastically declined. So depending on what happens with the programming and how much of this buy-in really sticks, especially for people, you know, the programming is more important for the non-Swifties, right? Because like the average person probably isn't going to care which version of Love Story happens to come on if they even notice the difference.
Right.
But if the programming follows suit with how we know the Swifties will operate, perhaps the values decrease to the point where maybe Taylor has the opportunity to actually buy back her catalog at a reduced rate. Because remember, she did say she wanted to buy it back, and they were kind of stringing her along, wanted her to record more albums and then give her the opportunity slowly, piece by piece, right? And frankly, I hope this happens because I don't think we need Taylor Swift to waste more time re-recording 5 more albums. I'd rather Taylor Swift make new music.
You want
So
more indie Taylor
I
albums,
don't
right?
did I don't need Evermore Part 3. I didn't say that. But in general, I mean, she's 31. It's not like she's going anywhere, but like
Right.
I would just hope, I wish that would happen personally. So let's remains to be seen, I guess. But very interesting premise. But again, let's not forget that Taylor Swift is one of the few people that can pull something like this off. And even if she doesn't control our masters, she's still hella rich. So it's like there's worse issues of master recording squabbles between artists and labels than Taylor Swift. We can't forget that either.
Yeah. I would like her to re-record a couple. Like I would be interested to see her like take another shot at like Reputation
Hmm.
or something like that, right? Like let's see her put a twist on it that maybe
Okay.
could be taken differently. But yeah,
Yeah,
I don't need
if
her
you're
to do the
changing
first
it,
one.
that's a lot different than trying to replicate it. This
Of
fearless Taylor's version is very much intended to be
replication.
replication.
Yeah.
So I think it depends on the goals for sure.
Yeah, true, definitely. Well, we'll stay tuned on that and be talking about Taylor Swift because she's very famous and popular. But we're going to talk about someone a little bit less famous, but I think also incredibly talented, and that's Miguel, who I feel like strangely enough has somehow become like one of the like top male vocalists somehow in
Mm,
at least R and
yeah,
B. But
definitely.
I don't know if I would have expected to be saying that about him like 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, Adorn is a legit a banger of a song, just one of the all time great R and B sexy jams. But I don't know if I'm like a super Miguel fan. Maybe you're a little bit more into him than I am, but wouldn't say any of his other tracks have ever like popped off to me like that. And he's dropping this EP, Art Dealer Chic 4, the fourth, of this series that he's been re-releasing the first three, which were self-released back in 2012. And this has some new tracks on it, some new recordings. But I guess like Dave, just give me your temperature, Miguel. Are you a fan? And then also, what did you think of this Art Dealer Chic 4?
Yeah, well, that's why I was interested to see this pop up, just because we haven't talked about Miguel in a while. The last album he put out was War and Leisure at the end of 2017, which actually did have probably one of my favorite Miguel songs, Skywalker with Travis Scott. I think that one's incredibly sticky, and I think one of the better attempts from Travis at doing a more crossovery feature. Um, but yeah, it's been a while for Miguel. I think he had some original songs come out in 2019, nothing in 2020. So it's been a while, especially for someone of his stature. As you said, he's at the top. I think he has a nice combo of being at the top, both critically and commercially when it comes to R&B. A lot of times it's one or the other, right? Artists like Brent Faiyaz and Giveon, not popular artists like Chris Brown, very popular but haven't made good music in a long time. Seems like Miguel's been able to, for the most part, keep both of those tracks going, but we just haven't had a lot of music in a while. And it's kind of like that James Blake EP that popped up, was last year sometime. Just cool to get a taster, remind you, oh yeah, Miguel, I like Miguel. I like to hear another album. And there's 4 tracks here, and I like 2 of them, and the other 2 I didn't like too much. But it's a taster EP. It just to remind you that Miguel's still out there. So looking forward to more, really.
Yeah, I on first listen, I think the two in the middle, Triangle Love and Thinking Out Loud, really stood out to me.
Mhm.
I think what I really liked about Triangle Love was just like how heavy the bass was on that, and a lot of this was very like these tracks were very produced, and especially for someone like Miguel who just has such an amazing
Mm,
voice to be like
yeah.
really like putting a lot of like mix and different like experimenting on his voice kind of felt like an interesting choice to me. But he also had just like these like crazy synths almost
Yeah.
in every single song, and I was like, okay, I'm down with this vibe. Like, let's just see where we're going here. So I think there's some things to like, but also some I have some questions about maybe what another Miguel album's going to look like. But what were the tracks that stood out to you?
Yeah, the first two, Funeral and Triangle Love, I really enjoyed the just how bass heavy those
Yeah.
drums were with Funeral. I thought it was a nice mix with the vocals. And then Triangle Love, also similar in terms of the drums. And I think Miguel's performance is really nice on that one. And then it has a really hard to miss sample to end the track, which is from the 2004 movie Closer. Julie Roberts and Clive Owen's characters talking about sex life and infidelity and all that stuff, and harkens back to other like raunchy samples, like famously Biggie's "Respect," for example. It's always funny to see that, but this was quite graphic, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah. Well, with Miguel, he's not gonna
Right.
pull punches on that.
Yeah. If anything, I expected. I'm surprised you haven't gotten more of this from The Weeknd, to be honest, because The Weeknd is truly, and Miguel's not that far off, I guess, but truly, like, I have sex all the time. That's what I do.
Hey, I mean, I guess there's worse things to brag about, right?
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we'll be getting something, more from him soon. So we'll be talking more about him, and check out the Nostalgia Best of 2021 playlist that's in the show notes for this and on Spotify for one of these tracks. But Dave, it's time to talk about your very good boys, your number one boys, Brockhampton. And I say that because really you turned me on to Brockhampton with your fandom. So I definitely am excited to hear your thoughts on this. We've now been able to review 2 Brockhampton albums since we started the pod together.
Three.
Well, I didn't review one of them. That was you alone. We've done Iridescence and Ginger together. I think you did the other one on your own, right?
Sorry. Yeah. This is the third one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did Saturation 3 solo. That's right.
And we are going to be ranking Brockhampton albums sometime next week. So stay tuned for ranking 2021, a year of rankings.
Yeah. YouTube.com/nostalgia pod. Hit that up now.
But here we are, Roadrunner, New Light, New Machine. The second to last album from Brockhampton, according to Kevin Abstract.
Allegedly. Saturation Trilogy was also the last Brockhampton album back in 2017. So, to that point, perhaps that's a suggestion at the RCA Records contract, famously 6 albums, 3 years, $15 million. There's been some speculation in the Brockhampton fandom just how many albums are left on that deal. It was signed in early 2018, so we know Iridescence and Ginger and Roadrunner on that. That's 3. This other one coming out in 2021 and before. Does Kevin Abstract's solo album Arizona Baby count? It was released on RCA. You can check those notes. I don't know. Amir Van's EP Emmanuel was not on RCA, so that probably doesn't count. But either way, that seems to suggest there's another album missing on the deal. So yeah, we'll probably call bullshit on there being only 2 Brockhampton albums left. But I think we've said from the jump, given the way these guys move and talk, that would not be surprised to see these guys take a hiatus, work with other people, branch out again. They've stopped living with each other full time for years at this point, so the Brockhampton dynamic has definitely changed over the years. But yeah, I think there's more albums in our future. I think most people probably think that.
Well, and Dave, why don't we set the table just a little bit? Iridescence, I think after the Saturation Trilogy, we were like, this is still really good. Like, this is really interesting music. Some real high highs on there with some real duds as well. Ginger felt pretty forgettable. I was even reading, I just looked over the Ginger track list, and I was like, no sugar, but I don't really recall many of these songs.
No Halo was a nice highlight for me in that St. Percy sample. But yeah, for the most part, Ginger was a letdown for sure in 2019.
And so, what were your expectations going into Roadrunner?
Right. And I think that's the thing, right? We talked about Iridescence. Like, wow, this is unlike the Saturation Trilogy, pretty obviously. But I think it's still largely commendable music. A lot of really interesting stuff there, but because it was more distorted and experimental, it's not as easily accessible as some of those Saturation era bangers. So it's just different, but still well made. But Ginger, as you said, just kind of underwhelming and forgettable stuff, but also unexpectedly carried that moodiness over, right? Post the everything that happened with Amir leaving the group, they seem to still kind of be in the feels, but Ginger didn't feel like as good of a time in the process, right? Fast forward, a year and a half now to Roadrunner. Listening to this album, reading the press, you understand there's still stuff to be upset about with Brockhampton. Notably, Joba's father committed suicide, and that is definitely impacting some of Joba's performances on this. So we'll talk about those songs later. But this is just way more accessible. I think these songs are really fun, and there's still a lot of range on here. Like they're actually at times as poppy as they've ever been, but they still really brought it with the raps, which I was really happy about because that was what I was a little afraid of with Ginger, because Ginger has their biggest song ever. Sugar is the biggest song of Brockhampton's career. The only song of theirs to go platinum. Their only song to go gold would be Bleach off Saturation 3. Both those songs are sung choruses. You know, Ryan Beatty, their friend, Bareface sings as well. On Sugar, Kevin sings. I'm sorry, but I don't need Kevin to sing. I want Kevin to rap, you know? So I was just a little worried about what direction they were going to go in, but I really like what they did with Roadrunner. Apparently, during the pandemic, they made 3 albums worth of music getting to this point, which is not surprising given we know how much they like to work.
Yeah, and I think they set the tone for this album just with the first track, Buzzcut, with Danny Brown. Obviously, it was a single, so we kind of knew this was going to be on and be probably a highlight. I think this is just a really great track. It's a lot of fun. I think Danny Brown kind of comes in at the end and like really just like delivers the hammer, and kind of sets the tone for the album. But like you talk about, they really do kind of go up and down in terms of tone, but it all seems to fit. And they try on a lot of different hats here. You know, like you mentioned how poppy they are, but I think some of the biggest highlights for me are moments when they get to be jazzy or funky or even kind of like I like, dare I say, like Kid Cudi-ish in some sense, like mixing
Ooh.
in some like rock like elements into
Yeah.
their rapping. Like for me, a clear highlight on this is "The Light," which is a song that Joba and Kevin Abstract each have a verse on, but it has just this like guitar solo in the
Mhm.
background with these like heavy drums, like rock drums, and I'm like, this shit fucking goes, and it's heavy material talking about, you know, it has a voicemail from Joba setting the tone of the song. You know, he said he's in the house his father committed suicide in, and then they both kind of go on to talk about some of their struggles. But that track, "The Light," just really stands out to me as like a central piece for the album.
Yeah.
Well, talk to me about some of the tracks that stood out for you and that you liked the most.
Yeah, I also really like The Light. And this one, Roadrunner, was cool to me because the progression of the group is obviously easier to track. But in terms of like the group members, there was unexpected new developments. If you remember back in Saturation, Job was barely a performer back then. Bareface isn't even with the group in the very beginning. Now, Jabari, previously just the producer, is actually on the mic too. And it's like, geez, they just pull people out of their ass at this point. Right? It's so funny. Uh, but yeah, and Joba has made lots of highlight moments over the past few albums just because of his unique delivery
Mhm.
on the mic. And I mean, obviously, remember him really spazzing the fuck out on Boogie back on
Mhm.
Saturation 3, for example. But in this one, just hearing him really bringing with the pen, and I think he's tremendous on The Light, but he's really good throughout this. Scratch, speaking of production, Don't Shoot Up the Party. It's
Yeah,
fucking G Funk. Like, what the fuck?
it's
That's
so good.
awesome. You know?
Yeah.
And like, Ramil, I just want Ramil to work with everyone. Like, he did that one song with Caliuchis, but for the most part, I really haven't heard other stuff he's done outside the band. But he's just such a talent in how he like arranges stuff. And we know they've spoken to their affinity for nerd, and I believe they've spoken on Cuddy and Tyler and stuff. So you understand where this is all coming from. But there's just a lot of dumb good tracks on this, man. Like,
Mhm.
I was really pleased with this, and it's actually funny to look. And this is tracking to be their least selling album in like 4 albums, and I was like, Jesus Christ, because like Ginger was a pretty successful album for them from the jump, first week and stuff. And I wasn't expecting that, and I feel like people are going to be missing out because like if you were a Brockhampton fan, I don't know how you can't be pleased with this. There's just so many moments. Not to mention, they finally acted like an RCA Records managed group because there's hella guests on this, really for the first time in a Brockhampton project. You know, apart from like the Dominic Fike appearance on the Kevin solo album, there really hasn't been anyone high profile at all, and even Fike wasn't high profile at that time. You know, but this one, like JPEG Mafia. Okay, well, you know, he's not the most mainstream guy, but no, we got fucking ASAP Rocky on this. You know,
with a like Caribbean accent and like toned down voice, he fucking kills it, man. He's so good on this.
I thought Rocky was great, and God, I need new Rocky music, man. I was really excited because he's good on this. Shawn Mendes is on this.
Yeah,
Kevin, Wilson? I don't fuck with no white boys unless the dude Shawn Mendes, famous line. Now you got Shawn Mendes on this, right? Charlie Wilson, as you said, man, so satisfying, really. And I thought all the guests were used quite well. They're definitely not people that would ever tack on somebody for fame. And they actually spoke with the Guardian a few weeks back about, you know, the desire to get a hit and how, you know, Ginger, their biggest song, didn't quite become a true mainstream hit. And like Ramil wants hits, and Dom speaks about wanting to just stick to what they are and not be worrying about stuff like that. And it's interesting to see the guests they pick, right? And like, do I expect any of these songs to be hits? No, probably not. Again, given those first week sales, that's not a good start anyway. But I think they did a really good job. And I think my favorite guest spot, though, would be early on. JPEG Mafia, Peggy fucking spazzes on Chain On. Absolute spazzes, man. So many good lines. The Vine reference, for example.
Yep.
Oh, man. So many moments.
Yeah, there's some really great moments. And, you know, I think maybe even one of the best songs we haven't really talked about is the longest song, Windows.
Yeah.
But that song is so fucking funky and jazzy, and like it's just like everything Brockhampton does well, where they take these like bits of ideas and somehow like just let them like flourish and grow and make something great. I never would have expected to hear a song like this, because like we've heard them do like jazzy, you know, you even think about something like Wildfire 1999 and you're like, yeah, you know, this is kind of in the same vein, but they just like, there's like just a saxophone solo that just like goes off in the middle of this song. There's like flutes coming out of the woodwork. It's fucking crazy. I love it. One of my favorites for sure.
Definitely one of my favorites as well. Windows, the only song on Roadrunner to feature all 7 of the main performers on one track. Actually, there's a physical version of this album that has 4 additional bonus tracks. I have not heard those yet, but looking forward to checking those out as well. Yeah, man, I think my favorite verse overall is that first verse on Don't Show Up the Party from Kevin. You know, Kevin has spoken about like, you know, more political things and more social things, obviously as an out gay black man and his experience with that with his family, and also as being a man in America writ large. But I think he does a good job. And again, combine that with a song that also fucking slaps. It's a good combo.
For sure. Album of the year for you so far?
Oh, I hadn't thought of it like that. I mean, we haven't had too many big albums, right?
I think it is for me. I'm
yeah, I mean, it's my favorite. It's definitely my favorite. Yeah. I think I really need to give it a few more listens, to be honest, because a lot of times, like, I have my guard up listening to Brockhampton. It's like, oh, what are they going to do? Because they're such an eclectic group. And I don't actually let the verses really like sink in until I give them a few more listens, right? You know, preparing for the rankings we're going to do next week, I've been listening to a lot of their older songs as well. And it's like, you just, sometimes like the 4th verse from Matt or Merlin or whoever it is, it's like, oh man, like all these guys have something a little unique about them. They know how to bring in, because you have someone really talented arranging like Ramil, like they just have a great chemistry. And I'm looking forward to that second album. I hope it does stick to coming out this year, but even if it doesn't, we'll obviously wait. I would love to hear a lot of the other albums they haven't released, for example. I think the most popular wish list album from that will be Puppy, because that was the album they made before Iridescence. It was supposed to come out, and then everything with Amir happened. They basically scrapped it. So that was probably really rap heavy and had a lot of good Amir verses. And it's like, we'll just never hear that one, huh?
Yeah, it's it's probably going to be the sort of thing we'll get eventually, but yeah, I'm really happy that one, you got me into them, but also that they've just continued to like be themselves and experiment, and
Yeah.
they're one of the most interesting groups out there for sure. So check them out if you aren't into them.
Also, I think one more thing we should talk about is in that Guardian piece, Kevin basically expressed frustration with the boy band label at this point. Label they've openly
They wanted,
embraced,
yeah.
best boy band since One Direction. But I think they feel like it's, I don't want to say played out, but like it's run its course where they've, subverted the label and did everything themselves and made
Mhm.
non-traditional music and all that. And now at this point, I think they just want those reins taken off. But I would like to see how that plays off, like with their fans, like really identify with that boy band label and really identify with songs like Sugar, right, which are more
Mhm.
of a piece with that boy band description. But yeah, it seems like they're actually what we really called them from the jump, which is a hip hop collective group
Yeah.
that does all kinds of genres, really.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing where they don't really like being labeled, no matter what it is.
Mhm.
And I respect that, and it's also very like this generation and this time, which I like. But you also can't have it both ways, where you say label me as this, and then people label you as that, and you're like, no, don't label me as that.
Right? Yeah.
But fluidity is important, so be respectful, and we'll call them whatever they want to call them. Why don't we move on to someone who probably would not respect Brockhampton's wishes to be called whatever they want, Joss Whedon, who's come under
Jesus.
fire as that was even as I was saying, I was like, this is ruthless. Joss Whedon coming under fire a lot recently. A lot of allegations of abuse on set, whether it's Ray Fisher, on the set of Justice League, or former actresses from his Buffy the Vampire Slayer days,
Yep.
saying
And Angel as well.
that there was a rule that Joss wasn't allowed to be in the room with them alone because of his conduct on set towards
Yeah,
them. And
that was
this was a
a
teenager,
younger actor at the time. Yeah,
teenager.
not good. Not good.
Yeah, no. So and I think also the Snyder Cut recently coming out has really brought some of his directing choices coming under fire a bit.
Hmm.
So then The Nevers is coming out. His newest TV creation returned to TV for the first time. I guess if you count Agents of Shield, the pilot for that,
Yeah,
I guess
I wouldn't
2013.
count that really.
No.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So like what, since Angel probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
late
So, and
2000s, really.
yeah, Firefly, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, all that. Should be a happy homecoming for Joss, but is The Nevers that, Dave?
No, it's kind of a double whammy, right? Because you have everything going on with Joss Whedon, who notably left the project after production last fall. So really, before more allegations had come out, he had already left the project. Um, but now he seems quite disgraced, and
Mm-hmm.
it's now being run by
Philippa
Philip
Gossett.
Philippa Gossett, right? And I think Joss directed 3 of the 6 first batch of episodes we're gonna get. Obviously, we're original showrunner, creator, one of the EPs, but he's not since left the project. But it's kind of that double whammy, right? He's left the project, he is disgraced due to his own making, and also the show has some flaws. So it's like it's tough. I feel like it's tough to invest in from all these meta reasons. But at the same time, it's like you have all these other people involved. And again, it's under a new showrunner. It's like, do you punish everything about it because of Joss Whedon? I don't know. Personally, for me though, the art is the art. The plot of this pilot, not the plot, but the pilot itself felt awfully messy to me. And I had a hard time investing in it. And at the same time, seeing a lot of things that are hallmarks of Joss Whedon's television career, strong female characters, feminist ideals. a lot of that rings really hollow now because that is not how Joss Whedon actually was in real life. You know, he was champion for bringing a lot of that to mainstream broadcast television and network TV at the time, right? And yet that's not actually who he was. And now you're seeing a lot of those beats that you might recognize from Joss Inc. in the past. But does it feel authentic this time around? I don't know. Because again, like you also have all these performers that you're seeing for the first time in these roles. And it's like, it's not everything is Joss Whedon. But yeah, to me, I just, I had a hard time with the breadth of characters in the pilot. It feels like there's a lot of room for subplots and side stories that might feel superfluous if not executed on well, and like, you can just kind of see the spinning of wheels before they actually get spun after one episode. I don't think that's a good sign.
Yeah, well, I think and even putting the off-camera stuff aside, where I first kind of felt like I wasn't totally interested or on board was this is what X-Men or Umbrella Academy or any of these things where it's like these people are different, have these powers, and they live at one complex together. Whatever you want to call that complex. Okay.
You recognize these beats.
Yes, exactly. So it's not like a super unknown plot or premise. You then take in all of the different subplots you mentioned, the political subplots, the crooked cop subplot, the medical, crazy doctor, evil doctor subplot. And then Joss Whedon's like, bitches, I'm on HBO now. Here's some titties for you. And look at how all these rich people want to have sex with these people with powers. And it's like, what? Like, what? Like, what? You're really just like flexing here, Joss. But like, also like with everything you got going on, really maybe could have just cut that part out of the show. I mean, I don't know how much it comes into the plot at the end, but just seemed like unnecessary. And then you kind of get to like the rest of the show, and it's like some of the powers don't totally make sense. Like the main character can see the future, but that somehow also makes her a great fighter. I don't understand the other main character's power, how she can see electricity and therefore can like just create stuff.
She's a genius.
Like, yes, yeah,
sure.
And then like the serial killer like villain seems to be a devil now. I guess. And within all of this, like the action scenes were kind of cool. I just didn't find myself totally captivated by it, and I was like, that's not a good sign for the first episode. If this is
no, this kind of gives me vibes of his Dark Materials early going, a show we did not stick with. That's a show that just wrapped its second season last year. The Nevers, as far as we know, there's more episodes coming because they didn't get to finish this first batch due to obvious COVID delays. But 6 episodes coming for now, 5 more. But yeah, I agree. Like the powers and stuff. I was just wondering, like, well, what are we going for with this show? Right? You're set Victorian England, all these captivating women with various levels of powers, some kind of X-Men shit going on, avoiding that persecution of society. Meanwhile, we'll also see other parts of the society. It's like there might be good bones to interesting TV here, but it just feels like it's like a big blob right now after one episode. And you have to really be invested in this kind of genre storytelling, I think, to want to push through it from what I've seen.
Yeah, you asked me before we started recording if this is a show that we might not actually get to the end of, and I gave up on his Dark Materials. And you stuck with it, so kudos to you.
I actually wanted to stick with it and haven't done that yet, so I've only seen the first episode as well.
So we both gave up on it. And this does feel like it's in that range. I'll probably give it another episode or two, but there's just a lot here, and I don't know if any of it feels worthwhile. I feel kind of bad for Philippa Gossett. Like what a thankless role to be in, having to come in and like clean this mess up, man.
It's like the coach of the Houston Rockets right now.
I don't even know who it is.
Yeah, I forget. First year in the job, it's like you just inherit a big mess, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the acting, I actually found Anna Skelly to be quite charming. She's the one who can see
Hmm.
electricity and seems to just be able to invent cool like steampunk things.
Yeah.
It's like she's just charming because she kind of reminds me of Saoirse Ronan because she's Irish. It's a very simple
Yeah.
appeal, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I also just wanted to say I thought the superpower where the girl can just sing and do stuff. I hated that. I don't know why. Just something about it just seems so corny to me. I was like, okay.
Mm,
Also, seeing the scene where they all, become touched is how they put it, which is also like, gotta think
mhm.
of another way to put it after all the stuff with Joss Whedon.
Oh, that's
Um,
Jesus, yeah.
yeah. That was interesting to me because it's got like that fish thing in the sky and then no one remembers it. But I don't know. Like it just doesn't feel like enough to warrant keeping going. So we'll see. Anyways, The Nevers on HBO. Check it out or don't. But let's move on to some movies that I think we both are probably going to recommend. We'll start with Moffie, a movie that came out quite a while ago, 2019, and we're just seeing it now. Why is that, Dave?
Well, it did some festivals in 2019, but aired in or premiered in South Africa in March 2020, right before the pandemic started, and then hit VOD in Europe last summer 2020. So US and Canada are actually the last people to get this movie in terms of distribution, which is pretty uncommon, honestly. Um, and this might just be I'm not actually sure why this is, but it might just be because it's South African film, I guess, and just the way it moved around and with COVID. I'm not really sure, but either way, we finally got it here as well. And as far as South African filmmakers go, like I really didn't have a whole lot touchstones apart from Neil Blomkamp, who's moved in Hollywood, of course, with after District 9. But this is directed by, was it Oliver Hermanus?
Hermanus, yep.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here because he's a South African man. He is notably mixed race, but this is a white point of view in apartheid South Africa. Not the most common narrative to spin, right?
Mhm.
Challenging. But yeah, I just had heard this movie was supposed to be pretty good. We finally got a chance to see it, and here we are, normal VOD at that, normal rental price. And I think it's a lot. It's definitely gloomy at times, not the funnest hang, but a lot of commendable things about it, I have to say.
Yeah, I think it's well acted, which especially for not really having any well-known actors in this
Yeah.
is really impressive.
Debut for
Um,
Kai Luke Bummer.
and I also think it's at times it's easy to probably make these comparisons, but I think there's moments where you get some of the tension that you get in things like Portrait of a Lady on Fire,
Hmm.
or even some of the like moments in Call Me by Your Name. Call Me by Your Name, even though I think has some emotional moments, it feels a lot lighter than this movie, which is obviously um, looking at a gay man and that experience through a very uh, difficult lens and
Hmm.
challenging lens because it's constant abuse, constantly being told that you are, wrong, you're a criminal, you're not supposed to be that way. But I think there's also some really nice moments. Ends on a really devastating note, I'd say. A lot of pain in this movie, and like you said, putting this during apartheid, and I feel like seeing some of it, but not really getting up fully into it is kind of like
Yeah.
feeling a bit used. But apparently, it is also based off of the writer's experience. So
Right.
um,
Yeah. What's adapted
tough,
from, right?
right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's really, I think, the crux of what each audience member has to uh, reckon with, I guess, when watching Mofi, is that you're set in, early 1980s South Africa. Apartheid's alive and well, and the whole prospect of the plot is that all, able-bodied, I think 16-year-olds and up, whatever it was in South Africa, white ones, are conscripted into the army for the ongoing Angola border war between Angola and South Africa.
2 years of
Right.
service.
And actually, Kai Luke Brummer, our lead actor, his dad actually was conscripted in this during this very event. And at this time, homosexuality is not only mocked and derided and hated by society, it's also criminal. And that's kind of our focus, right? But the movie, I think smartly, even if it's absolutely gutting to see, smartly reminds you of exactly where we are. Because when we get that train scene, probably like the second scene in the movie, is you remember how just about everyone we're about to see are just virulent, deeply racist people. And I thought that scene at that train station was absolutely horrific, really.
Mhm.
And then you kind of leave that alone, right?
Mhm.
And it doesn't really come up again. And you hear like the nationalism and the machismo and the toxic masculinity of their training and how they're being hyped up for this conflict. But for the most part, I think the race angle is again we're sticking to the white POV, and again we're focusing on now a guy who's trying to repress his homosexuality because it's really for his own safety.
Mhm.
And there's a lot to reckon with that, right? But it's kind of, I guess it was kind of strange to see how race came and went, because it's a gay story, it's not a race story, but race
Right.
is part of every story in the 1980s in South Africa,
Yep.
so it's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think after that train scene, I think the next time you see a black person is when he's on the front lines, and they're just greeting everybody, and they're like, "Yeah, look at the neighbors over here. We're gonna have some fun with them later." And it's just like a group of black people who are being held prisoner,
Right.
and it definitely feels like I don't know, something about it just felt a little bit off. Not touching more on it, but I think there's also obviously parallels to draw about the idea of like just a different identity during that time, not really being accepted. I think the brutalness of it all, like I really felt like those training scenes and
Yeah.
the drill sergeant was just so hard to watch and just so like overly brutal for no reason. And then you also get some of the quieter moments that are really brutal, like when he goes looking for what's his name, Masson,
Mhm.
or the
Stassen or whatever it was. Yeah.
assassin, and he finds the other soldier who is gay, and he has like the scar on his head, and
Right.
talks about how he had been treated based on his suspected identity as a gay man, and just really like brutal stuff to hear and listen to, and
Right.
it's hard.
Yeah, totally. The drill sergeant's played by Hilton Pelzer. I gotta say, you get some real shades of Full Metal Jacket,
Yeah.
obviously, in terms of brutal drill sergeants go in film. Um, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like as you're getting more of those scenes, you learn what the title of the movie means, right? It's a
Hmm.
slur for gay people in Afrikaans. It's like fuck. It's like the movie does not run away from any of that stuff, really. But as you said, story of our lead is much more subtle and understated. Again, kind of like I guess how Portugal on Fire did a lot of its
Hmm.
a lot of its weaving of a relationship. And I guess it kind of makes sense, right? It's like for the sake of these two men, there's no consummation. There's no just being ourselves and being out together. It's like no, they've long accepted they can't do that, and it's like this is brutal. It does not leave you in the best place, I guess.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. And that ending scene where they um Nicholas, the main character, and Stassen go to the beach and feels like they might finally get to like consummate this unrequited love. And you see him like reach for Stassen in the water, and he just like misses his hand, and Stassen's like, oh, I'm cold, and gets out, and then they're sitting together, and then he just leaves him there. And it's just like
Yeah.
the loneliness of being a gay man at this time. But again, it feels very strange to talk about that with apartheid in the background, because I'm like, yeah, I can't imagine being a black person in South Africa at this time, and the fear and anxiety of that. It's not to say one undermines the other in any way. It's just a overarching aspect of the story that
Right.
does feel like it's not necessarily brought about enough.
Right. And listening to Oliver Hermanis talk about the movie, from what I've gathered, it has been well received in South Africa. Notably, South Africa is a majority black place. You know, apartheid was minority rule, lest we forget. So it seems like it has been well regarded over there. And I think that's probably the most important audience for this film, to be honest. You know, I think Luke Bremer, for being his first film role, I think he had just a little bit of stage experience, but for his first film role to effectively have a, you know, performance like this where it's a lot of subtlety and not a lot of lines, definitely leads you to invest in his future career. I think
sure.
definitely talented. So, and Oliver Hermanis, funny enough, because this movie has come out, it was finished, you know, as far as he's concerned, so long ago, he's had time to pick new roles. He's apparently adapting a Kira Kurosawa movie, Kiru. So it's like, huh, well, that's ambitious to adapt a Kurosawa movie. Best of luck to you.
Well, interesting. Definitely. I think it's definitely a movie worth watching. It will make you think. And for as much as we might have like identified some detractors, I thought this was really well done. So definitely check that out. Let's also move on to another movie. Came out a little more recently. Shiva Baby. I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce this because
is it Shiva or Shiva? Neither of us are Jewish, so we don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Shiva. You know, the baby part of it is the really interesting word for the title. We'll talk about that. But this is a Emma Seligman film. I think this actually might be her first film.
Directorial debut, yes, an extension of a short of the same name she had previously made.
And again, just like Moffie, we're not seeing a lot of like really well-known actors in this. There's maybe, you know, you'll probably recognize like Fred Melamed, you know, from a lot of things. Maybe Jackie Hoffman. But it really, I think Molly Gordon was the one I recognized most.
Yes, book smart.
Yeah, and then also Diana Agron, who I knew from Glee, and she's great in this. We'll talk about her in a second. But this is a comedy. Dave, did you find this movie to be really funny?
Yeah, well, the obvious comparison you've seen a lot is it's bisexual uncut gems, but even more Jewish. You know, it's and the reason it's uncut gems is because of the claustrophobia and
the tension
and the anxiety that the audience feels throughout, because the movie does not let you get off the hook. It's a movie that's 70 something minutes long, but does not feel short, and that's because of how tension filled the story is, right?
Brutal.
And I really loved it, and I actually was dying laughing at the very end at the van scene. I lost it at the end there.
Yeah, the van scene I think was the funniest part, just because, you know, like there's like some sort of ending coming, you can kind of like relax. But yeah, so many moments in this that I feel like I should have laughed at. I just had this like gut wrench in my stomach where I was like, oh, this is so tough to watch, just like all these interactions go this way, and just like the subtext around everything.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes this movie so good and so well written is, you know, not only do you have this funny premise where, you know, Rachel Sano, or maybe Sana, I can't, plays Danielle, this, you know, kind of teenager who's going to school for a what's it? Is there a gender study degree, I believe?
Something like that. Make your own major or something.
Yeah.
She's the butt of many jokes as a result.
And she lives at home with her parents, you know, maybe not living up to the expectations of the rest of the people within this community. She's on a website called Sugar Daddy, where she finds these men who want to pay her to do things, and she does
it's a real thing.
Yeah. And, you know, she goes to sit Shiva for a community member that's died, and basically has to interact with her parents and all the other people in this community who are just on her case about what's actually going on with her
in the presence of her sugar daddy.
And then the sugar daddy shows up with his,
who happens to be married with a child. It's
a very recent child. It's a
Yeah.
lot.
It's like, oh my God, you can't imagine, right? Because there's so much going through her head. It's like, oh shit. It's like, does she feel bad because she didn't know he was married? And it's like, and then like he learns more about her life and like how she was lying to him for the money, blah blah blah. And it's like, huh. And I feel like the sugar daddy thing has been more out in the open. I don't know. It's like it's a secret, but like seeking arrangements, people know the website. Like it's I feel like it's ripe for more exploration, which is funny because uh, the director has teamed up with Adam McKay to make a HBO comedy series called Sugar about this very thing. And I'm like, man, a week to week 30-minute comedy about a sugar baby in like New York or something. That
Yeah.
sounds like a great show.
It
Like,
really does. Like
yeah.
I was thinking about like that show. Was it Love or whatever it is, or not?
Mhm.
Not Love. The other one. On Netflix where they kind of
You?
follow different characters. Maybe it's you. No, I don't.
I
I
don't
can't remember it, but
know.
yeah, they follow like a bunch of different characters. It has like Dave Franco in
Modern
it,
Love, is it?
something like that.
Oh,
But
whatever. Who
I
cares?
feel like that's like the perfect
Yeah.
model for it, and just kind of follow different people around week to week. Um, but yeah, no, this is a great premise. The writing I think is really really good. I think for not being a member of this community, but
Yeah.
knowing people within the Jewish community, and also I think some of the stereotypes around like some of the ways people interact within this community, they really play up it like some of these stereotypes a bit, but they're really done in a funny way, and I also feel
Yeah.
like pretty respectful way
Yeah.
still.
Sure.
Um, just really really good. I
Yeah.
really like the aunts like who are just like
Oh, totally.
out there and weird.
Yeah, I mean, again, like it feels authentic, even though I can't actually verify that as a non-Jewish person. But like, man, like there's just like Jewish slang and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. That sounds
Mhm.
really good the way you're saying it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure, you know, I really love the parents casting as a Polly Draper and Fred Melamed,
Mhm.
and like apparently there's a little bit of riffing for some of their lines, but they're perfect the way they just completely harass and embarrass their daughter,
Oh
and
my god,
I
yeah.
mean Rachel Sennott as Danielle, as our lead, I think she does a really good job of communicating this kind of weird inner turmoil while trying to play it cool and slowly failing at just about everything she needs to do in this situation. Again, it can be anxiety and cringe inducing to watch, but man, is it really funny, honestly, when you think about it. And she also is re teaming up with Emma Seligman. They're making a comedy movie called Bottoms. So I'm looking forward to seeing more from these two.
Yeah, no, for sure. Um,
Wait, so tell me about Kim. Tell me about Diana Agron. She plays the wife of the sugar daddy.
yeah, so she plays Quinn Fabre in Glee, right? And that's how I first came to know her. And she's great in Glee as basically like the popular cheerleader Barbie doll type who's
Hmm.
dating the jock, whatever. And she's supposed to be the foil to um, forgetting her name from Glee, the lead
Lee Michelle.
person, Lee Michelle, yes,
Yeah.
and she does it really well. What I really love about her in this, and what I think is so good, is she knows something is going on, but she plays it so cool, and I find her to be so fucking likable in this role, even though she's supposed to play this like Upper East Side rich snob
Yeah.
who should not be relatable. And all I'm thinking in this is like she is playing it so cool, calm, and collected when she knows that her husband is obviously has something going on here that's nefarious. And I just think her delivery on a lot of things is so like direct, but like
Yeah.
indirect at the same time. Just really well done. What did you think about her in this role?
Yeah. No, I thought she was really good for sure. Like the way like she's like subtle like side eye when
Yeah,
she's like assessing the situation as she's hearing people talk and is like, huh, what the fuck?
yeah.
Why do you have the same bracelet as me? Stuff like that. And then really at the end, where it's like, oh no, no, we got a car coming, like we'll call an Uber, and it's like
uh,
and they just go in the van, just completely defeated at the
yeah.
end. It's tremendous.
I really loved when she was like, "No, she's a babysitter. She can do this." Like, and like just the way she kept like harping on that, I was like, "Oh shit!" Like this is, but that also felt so real. Like if you were like trying to catch someone in something like that, you just like, "No, like that's they can do this. It's what they said
Yeah.
they are. Like really really liked her in this. And I haven't seen her in a lot of things. So just kind of seeing her back in I don't know, doing something like this again is really cool.
Also, a really good moment for between Rachel and Molly Gordon where they first talk about Kim and they're like, "Oh, she's so beautiful. She's like the definition of beauty to me." And then Rachel's like, "Oh no, she's like totally like fine and normal." And it's like, no, dude, she's like really, really hot. And the movie does a really good job of like highlighting that, like in a tasteful way, and like having the characters play off of that. Really good. Not to mention, yeah, the bisexual nature to it all. Like you have this relationship, an ex fling, also being there, right? It's like, I can't imagine what it would have been like to be in Rachel's position, right? Because you have your ex lover in addition to your current sugar daddy in the same room with your
Hmm.
parents. Oh man, so good.
Yeah, it's a lot. Check out Shiva Baby. Dave, what should people be watching for next week?
Yeah, we got hella shit, man. Oscar predictions time. Finally,
Dun, dun,
finally.
dun,
It's
dun.
been a while. Uh, Mayor of Easttown, the Kate Winslet HBO show, which is supposed to be quite good. It's supposed to be better than the Nevers. So excited to watch that. We'll also talk about Made for Love, the HBO Max show, Kristen Milioti and Greta Van Vliet's second studio album, The Saviors of Rock and Roll. Let's go.
We'll be talking about it all. Hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Follow us at nostalgiapod on Twitter. And yeah, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod for the rest. Long live DMX.